I'm Robin Miller-Brecker.
And I'm Karen Lenzer. Welcome to Seeking Center, the podcast.
Join us each week as we have the conversations and weed through the spiritual and holistic clutter for you. We'll boil it down to what you need to know now.
We're all about total wellness, which to us means building a healthy life on a physical, mental, and spiritual level. We'll talk to the trailblazers who will introduce you to the practices, products, and experiences that may be just what you need to hear about to transform your life.
If you're listening to this, it's no accident. Think of this as your seeking center and your place to seek your center. And for even more mega inspo, sign up for Seeking Center, the newsletter at seekingcenter.app. What if you could talk to a licensed clinical social worker and an evidential medium at the same time? You can. Meet Kate STACOM, who is a licensed clinical social worker, evidential medium, and founder of Clinical Mediumship, the practice of bridging mental health skills and mediumship to support life-changing healing and growth. Kate combines her clinical skills with evidential mediumship to help others reduce barriers and live more soul-centered lives. By combining the spirit of intuitive sessions with the processing, safe space, and evidence-based clinical skills of traditional mental health, she has seen her clients heal lifetimes of emotional, behavioral, and relational patterns, which has given them the freedom, clarity, and confidence to live out their soul's purpose. It is powerful. Karen and I experienced a session with Kate, and we were blown away. If you have ever experienced a spiritual medium or intuitive session and have experienced traditional therapy, you can imagine this being a transformative combo. We're going to dig into how this all works and why you may want to consider clinical mediumship for yourself. Let's get going. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, Robin and Karen. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. And I think for so many people listening, this is a dream come true job that you have, and the ability to bring in a team to really work one-on-one with people. So let's start at the very beginning and how you came into your mediumship abilities as a child.
Sure. I always like to say I really am your stereotypical born medium. I came into the world really feeling spirit. I would hear spirit. I grew up in an old home that was really filled with a lot of energy, and just being a shining light, being an open and tuned person to the spirit world, there was a lot to navigate. And I really can remember as early as age 3 and 4 hearing spirit, and I would be quite distressed by this. I had absolutely no idea who was talking to me. I didn't really have, again, 3 or 4, didn't have any understanding of what this possibly could be. And for me, it was fearful. It was scary. And I remember running into my mom and dad's room, like somebody speaking to me. And although they were filled with love, they were very much like, you are okay, you are safe, go back to your room. And I would just pull the covers over my head and just hope. And I'm sure in those moments, pray, right? I think we all have that innate desire to feel connected to something greater than. And so I actually do remember getting some comfort. So I wasn't always feeling so alone, which was beautiful. I'm sure my spirit team was there the whole time. And as I grew, I was always very eccentric and different. And this was so early on that I remember my mom saying, something's just different about Kate. And she was finding random books like on indigo children and like all of these quote unquote different children. And for my time, this was really early for my mother to even have this concept. So I thank her so much for always trying to see beyond diagnosis, because I was in the school system. And again, people didn't quite understand this. I just knew things. Like I remember going up to even teachers and saying things and questioning things. And I'm sure they were, who is this person? And what is she saying to me? And so I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I really hung on to that diagnosis. I was in and out of therapy, psychiatry, of just trying to help me fit into this world, right? And it didn't always feel like a good fit. I lost one of my primary caregivers, my maternal grandfather, at the age of 12, very tragically. And this, I think for me, looking back, was really one of the more eye-opening. It was opening me to the spirit world. It was saying there has to be a way, right? There has to be something greater than just this, because he can't not be here. He was really, I say he was like my security blanket, and him in the physical really was my safety. And we had seen a medium, even I think I was 13. So I was young. And I remember just instantly, and I have chills as I say this, instantly feeling him, instantly being able to know, holy holy mackerel, he's here. This is him. And just being able to feel that love, even then not registering I was one, right? Even then saying, this is incredible, but I can still feel him. I can feel him. And so I carried on through my life with that understanding while still, again, navigating the neurodivergency in a neurotypical world, not quite understanding who I am in growing and learning. But the spirit world was always really much a part of me. I would always sense the spirit world. It's just that I didn't really invite it in until much later in my life.
And then you then took a more traditional path and became a licensed clinical social worker. What did that look like? And where did that wanting to connect with people in that way come from? And then end up to where you are now.
Yes, it's such a fascinating story. And I love talking about this because I actually was going into theater and I was a very creative child. And I remember senior year, I was going through all the auditions and my mom said to me, Kate, you have to apply to one liberal arts college. What happens if this doesn't work out? She was always thinking like greater than. And I'm like, that can't be true. I would never. And I had a split second change of decision. Like all of a sudden was like, I need to not be going to theater. I need to help people. It was senior year decision time. I had done all of the work to audition and I went into liberal arts school and I said, I'm just going to help. I need to help the world. The world is hurting. And so it's the way that I saw theater of helping myself, helping others shine and create stories and tell stories. It was just a different way of doing it, right? A more practical way in my mind of helping and healing. And so I went into psychology and did that traditional route, ended up getting my master's in social work and focusing really much so on the clinical world. And I specialized in trauma and interpersonal violence. And I am forever grateful for that education. I don't look back at any point in time regretting that. But one of the funniest things is I never wanted to be a therapist. I didn't like therapy. As I said, my childhood was very much, why are you putting me in therapy? I don't need therapy. And yet here I am going to school with a clinical focus. And so I did that for many years. I ended up opening my own private practice where I concentrated on working with adolescents who are really not fitting into norms and wanting to believe in something greater and work on their own selves. And so I saw a lot of anxiety. I saw a lot of trauma and depression, sadness. Who am I? What am I doing here? And so those greater than questions led me in to, I feel naturally blending my clinical skills with the more existential questions. But before this or after this, as you see, like the thread connect all of this, right? All of our life's experiences, this is exactly what happens. Spirit leads us down this road and there's really no mistakes. So it wasn't until I had my firstborn, my daughter, Claire, was diagnosed with a congenital anomaly at 36 weeks pregnant. And we were very much uncertain of her really view of the pregnancy, of what our life would look like with our daughter. It really changed at 36 weeks. And we had to, there's really nothing other than to surrender. So my husband and I were just planning and surrendering over and over again. There's that constant shift between I need to be logic based, I need to plan for safety, and we need to surrender to what might not be what we thought it might be. My daughter's very healthy and she's beautiful and such a bright, bright spirit. And around the time that she was 1, and I was really starting to get out of that fight or flight, get out of the survival mode of she's okay now, was when I started to just ask the bigger questions, reconnect with myself. Who am I in this world again? Who am I in this world as a mother who's been through this? And that's when spirit came forward tenfold. And this was 2020. The pandemic had just started. I had shifted my therapy practice to telehealth and I was experiencing a migraine, and knock on wood, since opening up to my gifts, that has been much better. My migraines are far less, which is interesting. And I closed my eyes and my grandfather stepped forward like a movie reel. And I have chills again because I will never forget this moment. And he was communicating to me. So this telepathy. So his mouth wasn't moving, but I knew exactly what he was saying. feeling. And it was love. It was love. It was comfort. It was his presence. And it's so interesting because looking back, I don't even remember feeling like I was going nuts. And it could have been because I always had that experience of, oh, there is something else. But it wasn't that feeling. It was very much, wow, this is awesome. This is fantastic. And so my soul was ready. My soul was ready to step forward and to begin to use spirit, right, in session. And it's funny, it happened literally in between. It was not in my personal life. It wasn't on a weekend day when I was doing meditations. It was literally within the time of work and using it. So to me, looking back, that probably also was a symbol that they wanted me to use spirit with the therapy. That didn't click until very recently. That timing was absolutely on purpose as to when spirit stepped forward.
Can I just clarify something? I just want to make sure I understand. So this was actually during a session that you were having with someone that your grandfather stepped forward.
So it was right in between. So the in between of appointments when I have about 15 minutes to just settle. And so I had closed my eyes, started to take deep breaths, and that's when he came forward. And it's so interesting because I was able to just say, wow, okay, I will be with you later, talk about boundaries, and then hop right back in. Like, this is normal. This is totally normal.
And did anything that came through from your grandfather at that time have to do with your next appointment at all?
It didn't. That would have been insane. It did not. I'm going to help you with this. That did start to unfold more so personally. And I think they know I am incredibly ethical. And just that's something that also has always been hard for me is I'm the daughter of an attorney, and I'm just incredibly legal minded and ethical. And I take pride in that. And so I think probably spirit knew too, we're not going to give her too much. We're going to talk about things that's for her for now and in validation of their presence. So I think he talked a lot about just things he would know that only he would know, just to affirm that this is him even more. And that's how we just started.
Did you actually see him, or we see him in your mind's eye? What was that experience?
This was mind's eye. So I had my eyes closed because I had such a strong migraine and I was resting. And then he stepped forward. I do have experiences of objective clairvoyance. So I actually see people. That is quite rare. And my team, I do feel my spirit team knows now because as a child, I would hear objectively. So it was literally as though someone was in the, like a human, a physical person was in the room with me. I think they know to take things a little slower, and they did take things a little slower so that I really had to invite in the experience because I would have probably just ran the other way. So it's too much.
And then where did you take it from there then? Did you get to the end of the day and say, hey, grandfather, come back and let's continue our conversation?
Yes. And then every single day I would sit for 30 minutes in meditation and just write down every single thing they were telling me. It was so fun. And this is pandemic when we're like, what are we doing? Right? There's nothing to do. And that it was an opening for so much more. I just learned how to communicate with my guides. I learned to get messages for other loved ones, like other loved ones, family members were coming forward and saying hi and giving validations that they were here and they were more than ever present. It was a beautiful experience.
And then did you end up taking any courses or join any workshop of others that were also interested in?
Yes. And it was very soon after, I will say, that I was just ready. Like it feels like I started to really fine tune things so quickly because it was just, I'm ready. This is the time now. And so things unfolded. I am forever grateful because I could start the work earlier. I look back and I'm like, that was massively quick. That was very quick from A to Z. Yet my spirit team and my soul wanted me to do the work as soon as I possibly could, right? The world needs it. I need it. I heal and grow through the work. And yes, I started formally training very soon after, and it never stopped and it clicked and I found my way. And so what I started to do is I was trained through spiritualists. I will forever be grateful for the training that they have given me as a medium. So it's a very traditional way to learning mediumship. And so at that time, I stepped into being a professional medium and I was doing one-to-one mediumship sessions along with intuitive sessions as well, while also still doing therapy. It was very black and white. And again, ethically, that is how I could make sense of it and how I was using both. And then over time, as I sat with people, one-to-one mediumship sessions, I realized that I would close the session and I would be like, oh, there's this too. And then there's this too. And I'm not kidding. My throat chakra would hurt. It would be like, you're not doing it all. You're saying beautiful work. And the work was beautiful, but it wasn't all me. It wasn't all me. And it took a lot for me to say, oh my goodness. Okay. So we're going to do this different, right? I'm going to be a trailblazer a little bit in this sense. And I'm being called to bring this in to also using my clinical skills. And that's when clinical mediumship came to fruition.
Yeah, so let's talk about what that is. Yes.
I think you've given enough context, but let's define clinical mediumship and then how did that come to be?
Yes. So clinical mediumship is the practice of combining or bridging traditional clinical skills such as the safe space, the processing that's involved in therapy, as well as the clinical skills of the clinician and what is taught. So that uses various modalities. For me, I'm heavily trained in dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness. So all of those traditional mental health interventions, along with evidential mediumship. So along with using messages from loved ones in spirit to guide the healing. And what I found is so transformational that actually came out of just continuing to do the work was that spirit was uncovering far more than just providing healing. So of course, right, alone, those messages are healing of just knowing that they're there, that they love you, that they're seeing all this. But there was more. It was not more. In addition to, there was something else. And what they were starting to show was unconscious processes in the same way traditional psychodynamic Freudian therapy, hypnosis, these other ways of really identifying the processes behind the brain, right? Behind the conscious brain. This is where spirit was bringing in these things that people were like, oh my goodness, I never even made that connection. I didn't even know I still lived with that, right? So there was these aha moments that it was never my intention, I guess is what I'm saying. When I originally started, for me, it was like, this is fantastic. This is a way of healing, but they uncovered even more than what I originally planned for. And it continues to unfold.
Now, is clinical mediumship something that you came up with, Kate, or is this something that's being taught and practiced universally?
It is a term that I came up with. And so it is my way. I like to say that it's just my way of doing it. I have had people come forward and say, how are you doing it? I'm like, I want to teach. Let me tell you, because again, it's been such a learned experience, learned process. Of course, there are absolutely licensed mental health professionals who are also mediums, but I like to say we all do it a little differently. And what I recognize in my specific work really is the uncovering of these processes. And I think that's been a little different. It's just been something that I know my spirit team slid right in there. It wasn't expected, but has been so beautiful to be of witness to.
And so if somebody wants to work with you utilizing this process, it's usually something that you do over several sessions so that you can really dig in there, right? How does it
Exactly.
work?
Yes. So I set up my packages for 3 or 6 sessions. I do initial consultations. If you're just unsure, you don't know what this looks like, I offer that a 30-minute session. But the way that I work is over the course of sessions. Again, like I said, what I found when I was just meeting with somebody for one session is the work hadn't been completed yet. And naturally, too, people were returning to say, oh, so there's something that came up last session that I want to, and it was just starting to just roll over. And so I start with an initial assessment of 90 minutes. And then the following sessions, the follow-up sessions are 60 minutes. And you can purchase a 3 or 6 session. I have various clients that just keep buying sessions. So that's similar to psychotherapy. You're just continuing to do the work until you feel like you're ready to move forward with the new skills and new tools that you learn.
I want to point out to someone listening right now, if you can imagine, let's say you have a grandparent or a parent in spirit, and they know something that happened to you as a child. And that specific instance, which Kate would not know about otherwise, because you can't find it anywhere, that comes up in a session. lesson on purpose at that specific time, then whatever that instance that happened or trauma that maybe you experienced as a child, that parent or grandparent knew about, then you can start to work on that specific trauma. I just want to help people understand, in addition to then also what I know we've experienced with Kate and other mediums, which is also guidance for moving forward. So you're working through certain traumas that are impacting you as an adult, or if you're even an adolescent that's going through this, it's impacting them. But then you're also receiving guidance for how to move forward from a clinical social worker.
So it's like a universal modality, right? It's not just treating you as the symptom. It's treating you at a soul level, utilizing, as you said, your team of angels, guides, relatives that are helping you on the other side.
And I just also want to say that it's that, and the fact that you may not even realize that something as a child impacted you in that way until spirit brings it up. And so that's the other part that I think is so different, because there's so much that you don't realize affects you when you're older.
So enriching. Hey, can you talk about too, the difference that you see in the healing process of your clients using the clinical mediumship approach versus just the traditional social work approach?
Absolutely. Yes. And I want to point out they're both perfect. And they're both perfect for the perfect people, right? For each individual. So whatever you're called to, it's exactly where you're meant to be. What I find is that a lot of people who come to clinical mediumship work are the people who know there has to be something more. And so maybe they're trying traditional methods and it's just not lining up for them. They're leaving therapy sessions and there's something there that I'm just not getting. There's something there that I'm just not tapping into. It's those people that end up seeking out something different, right? And that is what clinical mediumship is. If you are open to it, I do feel it's a quicker healing and it's not linear. So I don't like that word, but what we can accomplish in 3 sessions with the same person is far quicker than if we were in traditional therapy, because spirit knows things. Spirit can see things that we simply cannot see. They can provide validation of things. They can provide healing. And as we know, in the spirit world, they have grown exponentially. The amount of healing and perspective that they have gained is something in the human world that we don't have the same exact experience. So it's their healing too. And that's something I didn't even mention, is that when I bring spirit forward in clinical mediumship, they identify that they're healing alongside my client. So it's incredible. It literally, sometimes I joke and I'm like, it feels sometimes like I'm doing couples therapy with the spirit world and my client here in the physical, because they're both, I have a lot of people that are working things out in ways that they couldn't safely process. They couldn't safely work out here in the physical world with that loved one.
Yeah, you can imagine that with an abusive partner, an abusive parent, an abusive friend, whatever it is. You can imagine for both. And to your point, that's eye-opening. I didn't think about that.
No. And one of the things I'll share from the reading that you gave for me was you brought 2 of my grandfathers through, one who've never come through before in a reading to me. And my father's father in particular, I was really taken with because he was very articulate about the fact that I need to take a risk. That was literally what he said. And he lived through the Depression. He lost everything in the Depression, was a father of 7 kids and had to really recreate his life. So for me, the significance of that message coming from him specifically really had an impact on me. Like, of anybody to say that, that was so moving for me. But it also shows the distance that he's come in his healing and letting go of that experience too. So I really think that reinforces what you just said, Kate.
Yes.
And that they know, and as we know in any session with spirit, they know far more than what our human brain can. They just know exactly who needs to step forward with what message. But it's interesting too, because I have a lot of people, this is reminding me of people who come forward in grief and naturally are like, I would love to hear from this person that I am missing so much. But the first session, we're sitting here, we're talking about their child childhood. And we're bringing in somebody that they never even thought would be relevant to the healing of grief. And yet it lines up perfectly. They're like, this, I never thought I had to look at that, but the healing is so relevant. And I also want to point out, because as I just said that I got a response from my spirit team to say, they also don't give you anything that you're not ready for, anything that you're going to be scared to see. I think oftentimes there is that fear of I'm stepping into this session, and there's such a level of vulnerability when you're stepping into a session with an intuitive. It's not just black and white. It's not just what's in the room. You're opening yourself up to so much more. And I say with full confidence that all of the spirit world is always working behind you, working with you. And they do know that when you're ready, whatever is meant to come up will be revealed for healing.
And I can see this being so helpful to people at all different stages, right? So perhaps they've gone through a grieving process and then they've moved on, but then now they're at a crossroads again about a job or a move that they are thinking about making and wanting to come back and have that experience with you, to have that sort of reinforcement, not only from maybe their loved ones, but even from their own angels and guides to help them.
Yes. And that's exactly what I see. Is it's basically meeting you wherever you're at, because that's what spirit does. And then something I didn't even mention that I really take seriously is the ability to hold the space and hold, as a professional, as a licensed clinical social worker and somebody who is mental health trained, really the ability to provide those clinical skills in trauma, to create a space that the body can feel safe to receive the messages from spirit. Because so often we are in a fight or flight, and it's not that we're not ready, we're more than ready, but our body just is not in a space to be able to hear it. And so part of that is my bringing forward those clinical skills and saying, okay, I'm hearing this. And that actually segues into my soul-centered wellness plan. So what I create with my package clients is something called the soul-centered wellness plan. And it breaks down your mind, body, and spirit, and how your mind, body, and spirit are communicating to you. How are you communicating to them? So how are you taking care of those areas of your soul? And with my education, I provide suggestions. So along the way, it's a fluid document. I use Google Docs still. I'll probably come up with a better process in the future. But it's a fluid document. And over time through the sessions, we'll work on it together. And I will add skills that I mention in session. And oftentimes that's not just for me, that's from spirit. Like they're saying, hey, I really think breath work would be helpful. Or I find that you're on your phone later at night. So we're talking about sleep hygiene practices. So it's in a tandem that we're creating a more comprehensive plan so that they can really integrate. Integration is so important. And so they can really integrate what they're hearing and what they're receiving from spirit into their daily practice.
Yeah, we could not agree more, because having had our own experiences 100 times over, if you don't have some way of taking what you learned in a specific session and then applying it to your current life, it's for nothing. You know what I mean? Yes, there's healing in it, but it's all about everything that you're doing. It is helping facilitate healing, someone healing themselves, right? Exactly. And that you get to help with all of your experience and all of your skills and your abilities. You are helping facilitate that healing, but the only person that can heal themselves is that person. And so you're just setting them up for success in that way. And what Karen and I always say, because that is, we so believe in having that process is the only way, and being able to talk about it with somebody on top of it, right? So to have someone to consult with, Karen and I have each other. We've helped many people ourselves integrate what they've learned, but now talking to you and having that process and coming from those kinds of skills, oh my goodness, that is such an incredible service that you're giving people.
Well, and you're also reminding people that they're never alone, that they have this team with them at all times to help them, that they can communicate with if they so choose in their journey. So in their integration, they can also call upon their grandfather, their grandmother, whoever it is, for help moving forward. And I think because the integration part, we all know that's the hardest part. It's great to take that step into your office, Kate, with you and to identify perhaps where some of that work needs to be done. But then once they leave or hang up from that Zoom call, it's about doing the work. But we're never alone. We always have that team to help and guide us.
Yes. Yes. And I think that was the guttural feeling that I would feel right when the session would end. And it was like, oh no, just that containment. It's like you have that safe space, but I need to see it further to know that I have, it's like my mission has been served. My role has been complete. This job is completed, rather. It needs to go a little further than just that.
Yeah. I think back to my first time having a full session with a spiritual medium who reconnected me with my father. And had I then also had additional sessions and had that person also been, it was magical. That was a magical unlocking for me. And had I been able to also take it further for my own healing, because what I didn't know at the time when all of that happened for me was that I needed closure. I didn't even know I needed that, or that I had so much real trauma underneath all of this loss and grief. I honestly had no idea. And what it then uncovered for me was all of this additional work that I continue to still do and will be ongoing. But again, I didn't even know I needed it. And so having this kind of process and ability that you're giving people and experience that you're giving people is really just, it's so needed, in my opinion.
Oh, it so is. I have a question. What does your mom say about your work now?
I love this question. And I'm giggling even more because my mom is also a medium. So she does. And it's so beautiful because I was just out for a walk with her yesterday and she's still in her process of figuring out, what am I doing with this? But she looked at me and I had chills when she said it. And she said, maybe my interest all those years ago, and it came out of her losing her father, was actually to help you along your path. And I was like, oh. And so she is nothing more than the best support. She's my biggest cheerleader and she's so proud. And I said, Mommy, you're doing the work every single day and you just don't know it. It's been a joy to see her child that struggled. I struggled to find my place. Basically, my entire life, nothing really made sense. I was a square peg in a round hole. It was like, this isn't fitting. And for both my parents, it's been an absolute joy to see it unfold.
I love that because when you mentioned that book about the indigo children, that was when my mom loved that book and she gave it to everybody that she met along the way. And so she always had that interest too, as she was doing the other traditional motherly things. So I think it's so incredible that she's now following with you on that path.
Yes,
wow.
No mistakes.
Can you define indigo children for those listening?
I don't even really know the exact definition. Okay, so it's just unique children that are not fitting the social norms, come into the planet asking for more, needing more than what the world has provided thus far. They're here to create change. I'm a manifester. And looking back, I'm like, of course, I'm a manifester. And so it's like they will say things that are quite out of the ordinary. Their actions are different. They can't sit in classrooms. They're going to ask, why do we have to learn these things? So they're agitators. They're here to break things up. And that's why they have come into the world. So it's generations. I know it spans generations.
Well, absolutely. My daughter is one of them as well. And I remember when she was young, I had never heard the term. And then when I didn't read the book, but I did do my own little research and she definitely falls in that category. And as a little girl, she was asking questions that were far beyond her years. And also she was articulating things that she could see that others couldn't. No one else would know. It was one of those situations. And we as parents, my husband and I fostered it and still do. And clearly because I myself now, I was not like you where I came out and it was traditionally, oh, I'm a medium. I didn't even know about that until I was older in terms of that we really all have abilities. And now I'm talking to deceased loved ones and spirit guides and whomever else will come through.
But I think it's interesting with both of you, really, a lot of your abilities came through trauma, or that was something that really unlocked for you and Robin. It was when Robin really recognized that it was actually trauma.
Right, that's right.
She went through most of her young adult life thinking that, okay, that was just something that happened and
Exactly.
that I had to deal with. And you, Kate, with your grandfather as well. He was the one who had that role. And Robin says her dad had the role for her to be the one who woke her up.
And now I understand that relationship, but I certainly never thought of it that way. So
no, yes. And it's not framed for children in that way, right? We don't talk about it in that way. Unfortunately, I do feel we're starting to, right? Just similarly to you, Robin, and in your work as a mother I think we are, as we start to see things, we're being able to provide that for our children. But yeah, there's so much more,
and for parents to realize too, I think that just because their child is different, is not fitting in, and I put in quotes, in the traditional way, that actually might make them even more special. And to lean in and recognize that. I think Robin and I've talked about the fact that even autism now, you have so many kids on the spectrum, and you can look at them as a whole new indigo children group that have come in to really adjust the energy of the planet. And we've just scratched the surface of what those children can do. So I think that's another area that's going to just blow up as we move forward, because I think they are really special and they have capabilities that we just don't understand yet.
I completely agree. They are so full of spirit, so attended, so connected, almost too connected for the human world, right? And so there's those sensitivities, and we're not taught how to be in a human body as a spiritual being. That's a lot of the teachings that I do, is just talking about the reality of that, and that it's not easy. In fact, this is also reminding me of, I had mentioned getting the ADHD diagnosis, and really it was out of need to stay in the school systems, to stay learning and engaged. And about 5 years after that, things had settled down. They had settled. My nervous system had settled. I had settled. And sadly, I think my spirit had settled. But I was going through a grocery store with my mom. And I think I was maybe around 12. So it could have actually been around the time that my grandfather had passed. And I looked at her and I said, Mom, I need to leave. I am hearing people. I am hearing people like they're right next to me. And I keep looking and they're not next to me. And I was absolutely freaking out. And she said, okay, you're okay. And she took me to my psychiatrist, who was prescribing ADHD medication. And she had known me for many years. Thank goodness. And she sat us down and she said, tell me what's going on. And I said, I'm hearing voices. And the psychiatrist took an assessment and did not pathologize me. And it is something that I am forever grateful for, that she didn't say we need further assessment. She didn't say you need to increase medications. You need to go on this medication. I am absolutely pro-choice around medication. Medication can be incredibly healing. But for me in that situation, that's not what I needed. And
someone
I think
could
there's
have clearly said, maybe you have schizophrenia.
Exactly. Any other mental health diagnosis. Yeah. And I actually have clients come to me with that experience. And then the trauma of not only understanding their gifts, but then receiving that diagnosis that is creating an additional narrative to who they are and how they fit into the world. And it can be both healing and not healing, right? I have many people who say that any mental health diagnosis is so helpful, and it absolutely can serve its purpose. But it's very interesting that we're talking about that. I think there's such a blurred line between mental health and intuition and connection to spirit and sensitivities. We can use all different language for it, but I'm forever grateful. That day, it was just like another day. And then I went on to doing other things and figuring it out along the way.
Wow. We were talking to someone just last week who, when she came into her gift, she really thought she was crazy too. You have those moments where it's like, what am I actually hearing? And can I trust that? And is this a mental illness, or is this my intuition? It can be really traumatizing for people when they're first coming into it and really recognizing, what is it that I'm actually experiencing? So the more we can help parents, like your mom, what a hero for doing everything that she did for you. She just wanted you to be safe and to fit in and all of that. And yet it feels like she just used everything at her disposal to really get you through that experience. Talk about soul contracts. You too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I just got chills many lifetimes for sure. She's my greatest teacher, and she's so full of wisdom. It's always so helpful.
When we're talking about being a soul in a human body, and for clients that come in, and clearly they're open enough that they're wanting to work with you, what do you find in terms of how they are embodying, and what do they say about getting in touch with their own souls outside of just being able to receive messages from spirit? Because they're clearly open to that. What kind of conversation goes on about who you are at your core?
I love that. Yes. So that's what I call soul-centered living. How are we living throughout our day connected to our soul, our innermost compass, our innermost knowing? What I talk about in a lot of times in my psychoeducation is I provide a framework through the lens of trauma and through the lens of nervous system. That's where my trauma education comes, is we are humans living, we are spiritual beings living in human bodies, and our human bodies are designed to keep us safe. They're not designed for us to connect to spirit all the time. And so it's about educating, providing those skills so that they can learn how to center their and ground themselves enough to be able to live a soul-centered life and ultimately receive the wisdom that they have. They have all of it. We each have all of it. We don't need anybody, and we're never alone. And so not only with our own soul, but then also connecting to the spirit world, we all have the ability to do that. And so I start really where they are. And that's a lot of the assessment that I do in the first 90 minutes is, let's talk about your everyday life. How do you live in your body? And how do you ground yourself? Is your mind very busy? And if so, let's talk about that. And so once we're able to focus the mind, center the body, and connect to spirit, to our spirit and to the other spirit world, that is soul-centered living right there to its fullest. We're able to really follow our own compass for guidance, for clarity, for just meaningful life. It's how to create life meaningfully. And so that's a lot of the more quote unquote clinical side of the work that I do. And so they all come in various different places in their life, but that's how they're living embodied, is each and every day connecting to you, connecting to your soul, asking your mind, body, and spirit what it needs, what it's communicating to you, and how to respond.
And are there suggestions that you can give people to who are listening right now to begin living a more soul-centered life?
First and foremost is set aside time each and every single day just to listen. Listening doesn't have to be meditating, but it has to be intentional. So for some people, I even say each time you brush your teeth, listen, ask your mind, body, and spirit what it's communicating to you and what it needs today, and respond. Because just like a little kid, if you were to listen and you were to ask, what do you need today? And you did not respond to their request, it's going to get louder. It's going to get louder and louder. And so we need to show our souls. We need to also show our spirit teams that we are here. We are available. We are open, and that we're working with them to heal. We're working with our own self and with the spirit world to heal and to be our fullest selves, to do the work that we came here to do.
I love the brushing of your teeth. Like, how many hours have I wasted in my lifetime not using that time for something dedicated like that? And it is something that you do every day. So it's easy. And I'm just thinking like that morning ritual.
Yes.
Time that otherwise you're wasting it otherwise. Love that, Kate. That is such a good one.
And let me be clear, I do not do that every day. I always want to be like, listen, this is not a perfect practice. Do I listen to my mind, body, and spirit every single day? Absolutely not. Do I see potentially the consequences of that? Yes. But I pivot, I create change, and I'm always trying. It's the intention. We are human. This is a human life, and it is not easy. This is not an easy life. And so we use the tools that we have, but we have to have grace for our own selves and our own processes, because we got these human bodies that are not so perfect all the time.
Thank goodness we have you, Kate, to
Thank you.
We all need guidance to get there.
And I wanted to ask too, how old are your clients? Are you focused now on adults, or are you also seeing adolescents?
Such a great question. I'm now just adults. I am always open. I just think that's what started. That's just what the spirit world's brought me initially. I am open to all ages. I just need parental consent and parents to be a part of the process if you're under 18. But that's what I was originally called to. And I'm always open to that because I think adolescents are so strongly connected. I find similar to children, they are ready. They are so connected to their intuition and to spirit, and they just don't always have the guidance to how to listen. So everybody, like 0 to 100 plus.
I feel like we have really given people a new perspective on how all of this can work together and really help them live a soul-centered life and getting to that place in a way they may not have ever thought of it before.
And I do that you can teach others, Kate, because I feel like you've just scratched the surface on the impact that this kind of therapy can have for people. So I hope people are inspired and they come and have a session with you, but I also hope it inspires others to follow your path as well.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I know that you offer that as another way of working with humans and souls, is working with traditional therapists right now and helping if they are open and want to potentially combine mediumship or intuitive skills with their work. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes. I offer consultations for any mental health professional who's looking to bring in intuition into their practice. And I feel that the world's asking for more. I don't think it's just as both of us, we need something new. And I think there's many people like me who are faced with that question of how do I do this? How do I possibly do this? And I am here for you. If you're sitting there thinking this can't be done, it absolutely can be done. I'm hoping one day that the mental health field adopts this in an ethically centered, clinically informed way. That would be absolutely fantastic for us to be able to say this truly is a mental health intervention in the way that I see it. That's for sure.
We agree. And thank you for being brave enough to be open and follow this calling. It's certainly your purpose. And we're so grateful that we get to amplify it to others because we know how powerful it is and can be. And I just think of my little 12-year-old self wishing, number one, that I believed that there was something else, that we never really die, and that I had a therapist that also, I loved my therapy. However, I wish that there was more. It would have helped me grow. But I know we all know it's on purpose. So.
Oh, but of course. And again, it's exactly for who it's meant to be for and on your specific path when it happens.
Exactly.
It's not for everyone.
And just also for people who are listening who may feel like they aren't on their path or they are different. You're such a wonderful example of someone who was different and became a trailblazer in a place that's just giving back to so many. So never doubt, just because you're different and you're not like everybody else, that could be the talent that you have or the gift that you give to the world. So don't hide it. Let it shine.
I agree. It's like the world always reflects back what we need to put out the most, really and truly. And it's just that reminder that keep going. If something feels authentic and if you're being your true authentic self, then that's what we can only ask of you. It is a better place when we're listening in and when we're truly shining.
Thanks to your grandfather. And your mother.
Thanks, Pop.
And you, Kate. Yeah, for all of you working as a team to bring this to the world. I know you're going to help so many and inspire so many.
Thank you. Again, it's such an honor just to see it all unfold in your own lifetime. And you just see the chain. You look back and you see the chain and how it all connects. And just grateful for all of the lessons and everybody who's helped me get here today, including both of you. Thank you so much.
And to find out more about working with Kate, visit KateStacom.com. That's KateStacom. And you can also follow her at Kate STACOM on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you.